Well, all of this is happening as that latest global climate conference is getting underway in Azerbaijan. And we're going to talk a bit more about the influence a second Trump presidency might have on climate now with Richard Klein, a senior research fellow at the Stockholm Environment Institute. Richard, thank you for joining us. Let's start again now with what's happening for the U.S. at the moment. John Podesta, who's Biden's top climate envoy, is in Baku already. There are just 70 days left now in the Biden administration. I mean, what can the U.S. still do at this point?
Well, domestically, they can still do a fair bit. But internationally, and the climate summit in Baku has started today, there's actually very little they can do. Everybody knows that, of course, they are at the very end of the Biden administration, that any kind of agreement countries would make with the US is basically moot, because soon Trump will be in power and most likely take the US out of the Paris Agreement.
Now, as you said, there are some domestic plans, some domestic things that the Biden administration can still do. It is trying to protect some of those policies in a race to do so before the Trump period begins again in January of next year. But of course, the U.S. did continue to break records as the world's biggest oil and gas producer, even during Joe Biden's presidency. I mean, what policies does the U.S. have in place exactly domestically, and have they been successful so far?
Well, the most important part of the Biden package, and hopefully also a legacy in a way, is the Inflation Reduction Act that contains basically a very large investment package for green infrastructure, clean technology, and that has been quite successful in the sense that it has shifted. Or at least has begun to shift the United States away from fossil fuels. So you're absolutely correct. There is still a lot of fossil fuel exploration and consumption happening. But at the same time, there is also a lot of investment in clean technology. The question is what will happen with the Inflation Reduction Act, and to what extent Trump is willing to continue investing what are basically also Republican areas that have benefited from it.
Right, because we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars for climate change mitigation, adaptation through this Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, what are your thoughts? Will Trump get rid of all that?
It's hard to say. I think it really depends on just how irrational he is. It would be a very silly decision, considering the benefits it has domestically to the U.S. economy, to local communities and states. But you know, his rhetoric is such that he doesn't want to have anything to do with it. He wants to drill, and if that's what he's going to do, then that will cost the U.S., but it will certainly also cost the world.
Right. I want to get back to the international thing you were talking about earlier. I mean, Trump again promising to pull out of the 2015 Paris Agreement. He's labeled efforts to boost green energy around the world a scam. Do you think anything or any one country might be able to change Donald Trump's mind?
I don't know. I certainly hope so. I think the EU is too divided at the moment to be as strong as they were 8 years ago when he first pulled this trick. Also, the relationship between the EU and China is characterized by more tension than it was 8 years ago. So it's going to be more difficult for the world to stand up and unite against Trump, so to speak.
And there's another issue, too. I mean, perhaps U.S. disengagement could lead other countries to backpedal on their existing climate pledges, or perhaps even scale back future ambitions. Do you think there's any truth to that the U.S. might be the leader of a new pact?
There is some concern there. I think that concern also certainly existed 8 years ago, and it was it turned out that countries were willing to stand up. I think, this isn't about following a leader, or this is also countries are willing to do what is in their own interest, and investing in clean technology, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It's not something you only do for the rest of the world. You do it for yourself as well, because it makes economic sense. So in that sense, I think that the momentum that has been created over the past few years with prices of clean technology going down, renewable energies being competitive or even more than competitive, that momentum is here to stay. And that's also why I think in the end, the US is going to be losing out.
All right, Richard, thank you for that. You're a senior research fellow at the Stockholm Environment Institute. Thank you so much for speaking to us ahead of your trip to Azerbaijan for the COP29.